I'm starting here with Z spheres. I'm creating it mainly. There's a number of reasons why I chose this method, but the main thing is just speed. I worked in a studio a few years back where I was making a lot of characters over a period of 2 years, one every 3 or 4 days for mobile. Z spheres were the easiest way to get it out. This is adding the adapted skin. I wasn't happy with the hands weren't quite large, and basically based on the concept, it was the hands were about the same size as the head, which is no problem, you know. But looking at it here, I'm just measuring the heads based on the concept. I think it was 7 heads long or something like that, maybe 8. Generally, when you're building a character, if you want a heroic female, heroic male, mainly for heroic male or heroic females, if you make the head ever so slightly smaller, it makes it look more heroic, especially with an elongated female like this one. I was aiming for wide hips, thin waist, thin chest, long legs, that kind of thing. But measuring it out all the way along, making sure it's going to make sure it's similar to the concept I was basing the initial sculpt off. To be honest with you, it is my, you know, I'm making my own kind of idea of Jinx here, but I'm certainly looking at other references, and I want to get it, you know, as accurate as possible to the original, so it's noticeably Jinx, while still having a nice style to it that I'd adapted. Here I'm using clay tubes, my favorite brush, clay tubes. I'm ZV meshing a little bit to make after I've got the general forms correct. And just clay tube my way around it a little bit. At some point I was happy where I was and thought, right, I'll duplicate and continue a bit more. So I've got a copy. What I like to use as well, I have left on my pure. I would show you the reference board, but it's got some nude figures in there, so I want to, you know, keep it sensible for YouTube. But I also use a 3D total anatomy figure, which I'll pull up here in a second to show you. It's made by Dan Crossland. It's a very good figure. That I have a few of them. The great reference that really helps you because you can move around them basically. This statue, and they're fairly cheap for what you can get. So it's good value for money. I highly recommend it. I'm again checking the proportions, making sure it's sitting right. And adding the main landmarks basically at the moment. I tend to draw in with damp standard at the general forms, then sculpt it in with clay tubes, smooth it back down again. This actual video sped up, I think, 8 times, so it's 5 hours in the end of 2 days. Again, I'm trying to make sure their hands are quite large. They will have gloves in them as well in the end, I believe, so on both hands, and so not necessarily too much detail. But it's the same with the whole sculpt, really, because it's a stylized character. You don't have to go overboard with the detail. You just want it to be look cool as anything, really, and get those nice plane changes in there. So no matter what angle you're viewing it from, it's got something of interest to view. And of course, keeping it anatomically correct, as long as it's as well as being stylized. So getting quite close to the finished product of the form there. What I've done with the arm twist there is, with the anatomy figure I have, the arms are pointed forward, and quite a lot of weapons the arms tend to be pointed forward, so it's easy to do that to begin with. But for topology, it works out quite a lot better if you have them pointed downwards towards the hips. That kind of twist. I think the main concept I was looking at for this one, the hips were quite large and the waist was very small. However, pointing in 3D and trying to produce something similar, it just wasn't sitting correctly. I tweaked around with it quite a bit, trying to see how far I can push that waist in, but that's about as far as it will go, really, without it looking abnormal, basically. Again, ever so slight torso changes there, elongating it a little bit more. Trying to make it more heroic, basically. Make sure the weight is centered. I think we're getting to a fairly good place there with the shapes. My initial sculpts, really, I don't like to really smooth them that much. I prefer to just work on it, get into the shapes I want, refine, and then smooth ever so slightly to get it to look more natural. Now I'm just using the damp standard to highlight some areas as well. Then building up again. We're quite close to the finished product there. It's looking quite anatomically. I think it's suiting. I'm just adding in the curvature. I'm just adding in the shape of the hands now. Trying to make it, adding the curvature there of the thumb. I think in a minute I start working on the other side as well, making it less flat, basically. think when I was at uni, maybe 15 years ago nearly now, there was a lot of discussion of whether you need reference to do your art, you know, your first time learning all this kind of stuff, and please use reference, no matter what, you need it. Everybody needs it. There's going to be something you forget no matter what. The human mind is not that well built. And I highly recommend PureRef. It's free. I'll put a link to it in the description as well for you. For the feet there, looking at the concepts, she never has her boots off, you know, so there's no point having toes. There's no point me even bothering making toes at the moment. So I've just sculpted enough in to work on when I build the shoes later. And it's the same with the hands. I'm sculpting in enough definition to make it fine, but when I actually get down to actually making the hands later on for the clothing, only one hand has nails, and if I made the nails now, it'd be really difficult to make the gloves. I'd have to rework the hand a little bit. Whereas I could just make the nails for one hand later, because the other hand has a glove, the other hand has just fingers showing. So I'm just looking at basically choices, what I need to design, what I don't need to design, what I'll get away with. It's the same later on. I decided not to do the poly paint for this one. I've decided for the body, I'll do it in Zbrush. Not Zbrush, in Substance Painter. Painting. Whereas for the head, I decided to poly paint it. Here's an interesting method that I'm producing right now. An easy way of connecting to a body and a head would be to Dynamesh, but by Dynameshing you tend to close off the fingers sometimes, and the mouth, it can be really difficult. This way I'm basically bridging the gap between the two sides, then I can Z-remesh, so it works really well. Yeah, here I'm just making sure the Z-remesh will make sure it has a decent flow for the poly loops basically. But as you can see, I've already combined it. It's got a separate poly loop there for the head and the body. Now I'm adding the poly paint to its identity, to where I want the Z-remesh going. But I believe after this point I had a little bit of trouble with around the mouth area. It connects, it works, as you can see, it works. It needs a bit of closing off, but when I closed it I discovered some holes in the mouth. I'm not sure where they came from, so it took and when I projected it, it also became a bit of a problem as well. As you can see, I found some holes there, so I've closed it off. Again, it's a fairly simple process, and it's a lot easier than Dynameshing. But I wound up with quite a few problems there anyway on the projection when it gets to the mouth area in a second. It became really an issue. Relatively easy to solve with some hard work. But ideally, it would have been better if I'd done this with the mouth open, which I realised later, and redo it a little bit. As you can see, real projection issues there. There's ways around that, but if it's so messed up as mine was there, sometimes it's easier to try a different way. As you can see there, somehow the mouth has been welded together at some point, so there's various elements I needed to rework on this little area to make it to work better. In the end, when I'm baking it, I want the mouth open when the high poly is done, so that I don't have any normal issues on the mouth. But also, I want to be able to see in the mouth in case she smiles, in case she talks, anything like that. And if it's going to be a game character, she's going to have to open her mouth sometimes to speak or anything. So depending on what the character is or what game it's for. But I want to build it for that. So that's what my aim is. So even though I shut the mouth again later, certainly at this point, certainly later on I will open it up again for baking. But I don't really want to work on a character with an open mouth all the time looking terrible. So I've shut it again later on. As you can see, I'm still having an issue here with with the mouth area. It took quite some time to figure this out and sort it out. I think I reworked the mouth a little bit more and to model underneath it, and then we projected onto it again. So yeah, some issues there, some mistakes that maybe I could have avoided in a different way, but I got through them. And again, the whole body sculpt still only took 5 hours, so maybe it would have taken 4 if I hadn't had to worry about this part. Oh, never mind. Yeah, as you can see, there's various issues there. Even polyloops, you know, parts of the mesh that are just separated in the head for some reason. I don't know how this has occurred. It must have occurred at some point in the process, so. But, it's heavy meshing again. Seems to be okay. Reproject. I'm getting less deformation there, which is better. Less bad projection. I think we're nearly at the stage where we're quite happy with what we've got, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it now. We're at a good place with it again. Okay, now I'm just smoothing it off. Only smooth. I mean, it was quite funny. The very first time I used Zbrush, well, I can't remember how long ago. It was quite a while ago, possibly 10 years ago, and I was sculpting away, and I got smooth, and I just basically smoothed the whole thing. It's like, oh right, I've got nothing left anymore. It's so you do learn to quite quickly, but yeah, I smoothed it. I smoothed off so I can keep the form, so I haven't done it too much. Then began pulling it. That began creating the final details, working the chest a little more, having some more definition in the arms, pelvis, and the belly button. Kind of basing the general style of a few different stylized base bodies I've found. I've got reference of, but that's just only the style. The actual shape of it and everything was based mainly on some pictures of Jinx, but also trying to find that aesthetic that I quite liked at the same time. Just squatting around the mesh, trying to find anything that didn't look right. I think even though you have your reference, even though you have your statues and everything to check reference on, because of the experience after years and years of doing it, you do wind up being able to notice when something doesn't work quite quickly. And the human mind picks it up very easily anyway, so because it's so used to looking at human bodies. So I don't have much detail in it here, but enough to get by, I think. After doing the high poly sculpt, or during the high poly sculpt of the clothing, I'll probably recheck it, make sure it's enough detail. But I think that seemed okay for what we're after, to be honest with you, for the style. Perhaps those veins on the wrist were a bit too much, but we'll see what it looks like when it's near the end. This bit was kind of crumpled when we added it together, so it needs to be re-sculpted. Oh, so I'm adding more shape to the chest area. Keep checking over, seeing where there's issues that I'm not happy with that just look like I could just touch up a little bit more, you know. Change it to a different material so I can see the lighting better, see how the shapes hit it. I know it is here. I think at some point I must have knocked the head, so the standard brush or move brush, so there's a few errors to fix there. Here I'm adding noise. But the noise I'm using is basically a fine pause map from Texture XYZ. I have a few. Sadly, as you can see, it's got a stretching. It's projecting from the front to the back. So I decided here to re-UV it. See what I can get away with doing it this way. So I'm just creating the polygroups there to VUV and a quick VUV. It doesn't matter about where it's placed or anything. This is only for the surface noise, so it's not really a problem. So it needs to be perfect. And I'm making sure I don't get this surface noise on the actual head because I've already got the XYZ head used on there. So what I like to do something like this, I like to add a morph target and also layers. So you can dial in and out, as you can see. Test what works best so it can match up with the head pause. I'm just checking it, making sure it fits, making sure it's the right levels. And the final thing I'm doing here is I'm moving an original head with the mouth shut. Because I'm aware I've lost some of the detail on the on the new head, so even when projecting, it's like I've knocked it around a little bit by accident, so I want to reproject one more time, just on the head. And what I do is I mask off just the head area, so I'm not causing a problem anywhere else on the mesh. I was just adjusting the cage. And then fix any real big areas that are quite apparent. And what I'm doing now is an inverse of the surface noise, doing the opposite. I can have a pause out, pause in. And finally I'm putting I've put layers on that, then moved it back into position. So I can work with it with its mouth shut happily. I can turn it on, turn it off, so she can be mouth open or mouth closed whenever I want. So when I'm ready for baking, I can just open the mouth again, clean it up, ready for baking. As you can see, it's the same way you make blend shape, basically.